What happens when the man who owns 15 stores walks into one of them as a nobody, and not a single person knows he's the boss? Brayden Dorsey had never planned to run the company. His father built it from scratch, warehouse by warehouse, store by store. After his father died suddenly 2 years ago, Brayden inherited everything. He kept the company afloat, expanded it, and modernized the systems. But lately, something wasn't sitting right. The online reviews for store number 9, one of their busiest distribution hubs, had dropped hard over the last 3 months. Orders were late, inventory was off, and 2 warehouse workers had quit in the same week. The district manager blamed young staff being lazy and the staffing crisis. Brayden wasn't buying it. "I don't want another report," Brayden told his assistant. "I want to see it myself." He had never met the team at Store 9. Most hires were done through a third-party recruiter, and the manager, Shannon, had only been there for 6 months. Perfect cover. He shaved his beard, dyed his hair darker, and wore thick-rimmed glasses. Then he threw on an old hoodie and steel-toed boots. As far as anyone knew, he was Ben Dawson, a new stockroom trainee. He even had a fake ID badge made. He walked into the warehouse just before dawn. It was loud, cold, and smelled like cardboard and coffee. "You the new guy?" a tall young woman asked, her voice flat. "Yeah." "Ben," he said, sticking out his hand. She didn't shake it. "Zariah Clifton, follow me." Zariah moved fast. She explained the scanner system, showed him where the incoming pallets were dropped, and handed him a roll of stickers. No small talk, just work. By noon, Brayden's back hurt. He hadn't done physical labor like this in years. He messed up a few codes and dropped a box of cleaning supplies. Zariah didn't yell, but she didn't sugarcoat anything either. "You keep scanning wrong, you're gonna throw off the whole count. And trust me, you don't want Shannon on your back." "Shannon the manager?" Brayden asked. Zariah nodded and lowered her voice. "She's not someone you want to mess with." "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "Just don't talk too much. Do your job and keep your head down." Later in the break room, Brayden sat near the vending machine watching. The energy was off. No joking, no relaxing. A guy named Lewis sat with his head down, barely touching his sandwich. Another worker, a short guy with tattoos named Marcus, whispered something to him. "I'm not saying anything again," Lewis muttered. "Last time I did, Shannon called me into the office and said if I talked reckless again, I'd be replaced." Brayden's stomach tightened. He watched Zariah walk in, grab a protein bar, and leave without a word. After break, Brayden worked side by side with her again. "Hey," he said gently. "That thing you said earlier about Shannon. I heard Lewis say something in the break room. Is she threatening people?" Zariah didn't answer right away. Then she glanced around and leaned in. "Look, I don't know who you are or what you think you're doing, but if you want to keep this job, stop asking questions. Shannon finds out you're talking, she'll bury you." Brayden blinked. "She can't do that." "She can. She has. Marcus tried to report a safety issue last month. He got put on night shift the next day, no explanation. He's got a kid, man. He couldn't even pick her up from daycare anymore." Brayden felt his jaw tighten. He looked across the warehouse, where Shannon stood near the loading dock, arms crossed, talking to someone in a suit. Probably the district manager. Zariah kept working. "You want to help around here. Do your job. Don't get anyone else hurt." That night, Brayden sat in his car, staring at the warehouse through the windshield. He had thought the problem was lazy employees. What he found was fear, and he was just getting started. Brayden showed up the next morning before the lights were even on. The parking lot was nearly empty. He wanted to see who really opened the place. The steel delivery door creaked open at 5:52. Marcus, the tattooed worker from the break room, walked in balancing a coffee in one hand and keys in the other. Brayden waited until he unlocked the side entrance, then followed him in. "You're early," Marcus said, not looking up. "Couldn't sleep," Brayden replied. "Figured I'd get a head start on the backlog." Marcus nodded once, then pulled a clipboard from the wall. He checked the sheet and mumbled something under his breath. Brayden caught 2 words, still short. "Who's not coming?" Brayden asked. Same two temps who bailed last week. They were supposed to be replaced. Guess nobody showed again. Marcus didn't seem surprised. He pushed a rolling cart across the concrete floor, wheels squealing with uneven weight. Brayden followed, pretending not to stare at the way the guy kept stretching his shoulder every few minutes. "You all right?" Brayden asked. Marcus hesitated. "Old tear, from a few months back. Never really got time to heal. No workers' comp." Marcus looked at him like he was stupid. "You really think they'd give me time off? Shannon said it was my fault for lifting wrong, told me if I took more than 2 days she'd let me go." Brayden clenched his jaw but said nothing. By 7, the warehouse was humming again. Forklifts beeped, scanners chirped, and the air filled with the low thud of pallets hitting the floor. Brayden was assigned to the inbound section again, same as yesterday, but this time he wasn't alone. A new guy named Theo joined him, thin, pale, and barely out of high school. He looked like he hadn't eaten a full meal in days. His hands trembled slightly as he peeled the shrink wrap off a stack of boxes. "You knew too?" Brayden asked. Theo nodded. "Second day, you get trained at all?" He looked confused. "Zariah showed me the scanner yesterday, but no one else really said anything." Brayden glanced at the stack of boxes labeled incorrectly wrong SKU, wrong destination. Theo was scanning them anyway. "Hey, hold up. These are marked for store 15, not 9. Theo froze. "I thought this was the right pile." Brayden stepped closer. "They mix pallets sometimes. We gotta double check before scanning." Theo's face went pale. "I already scanned like 20. Okay, we'll fix it. But don't scan anything else until we're sure." "All right," Theo nodded, looking like he might throw up. A few minutes later, Shannon stormed over. "What the hell is going on over here?" she snapped. Brayden raised a hand slightly. "Just caught a misscan." It was an honest mistake. Shannon's eyes locked onto Theo. What's your name?" "Theo," he said, barely audible. "You've been here less than a week and already screwing up inventory counts," she barked. "Do you even know what you're doing?" Theo looked down. I thought it was the right pile." "You thought wrong. That mistake costs us man-hours, rerouting, and customer delays," she said. "You want to keep this job, learn to pay attention." Brayden stepped forward. "He wasn't trained right. He's not the problem." Shannon's eyes narrowed. "Ben, isn't it? You've been here, 2 days? You don't speak for anyone." "I'm just saying if people aren't shown the process," she cut him off. "No one asked for your opinion. If you want to keep your spot, don't get involved in things that don't concern you." She turned sharply and walked off. Theo looked like he wanted to crawl into a box and disappear. Brayden crouched next to him. "You okay?" Theo nodded, but tears were pooling in his eyes. He wiped them quickly and turned back to the scanner. The rest of the day passed in a slow grind. Brayden made mental notes: missing safety gloves, a broken step ladder, a forklift with a faulty brake that Marcus had to kick in manually. No one seemed to care. No one reported anything. No one wanted to be next on Shannon's radar. Around 3, Zariah pulled Brayden aside behind a stack of sealed boxes. "You pissed her off," she said. "I noticed. She's gonna find a way to push you out if you make her look bad again." Brayden crossed his arms. "How long has it been like this?" Zariah glanced around. "Since she took over. Before that, it wasn't perfect, but people felt like they could speak up. Now, everyone's walking on glass." "Why stay?" he asked. She exhaled through her nose. "Because I'm not letting her run me out. And because some of these guys don't have anyone else looking out for them. Like Marcus," she nodded. "And Lewis, and now Theo, apparently." They parted before anyone noticed, but Brayden's mind was racing. He needed more than observations, he needed proof. And as luck would have it, an opportunity came at 4:30. Lewis was sweeping near the back office hallway when he dropped his dustpan. As he bent to pick it up, the office door opened and Shannon stepped out with a clipboard and a tablet. She didn't see him. She was mid-conversation with someone on a voice call. "I told corporate the head count was fine," she said. "If I put in another requisition, they'll start asking questions. No, I'll just ride the current crew a little harder. They'll manage." She turned and saw Lewis. Her face changed instantly. "Get back to work," she snapped. He nodded and moved without a word. Brayden approached him 15 minutes later in the break room. I heard what she said. Lewis looked at him, startled. Brayden leaned in. She's been lying to corporate, saying we have enough people when we don't. That's why you're all stretched thin. Lewis's lips pressed together. You didn't hear that. I did. You didn't, Lewis repeated. Because if you did and you say anything, she'll turn it on you. She always does. Brayden paused. Let me ask you something. If someone from corporate walked in here tomorrow and asked what it's really like, would you talk? Lewis's jaw clenched. Not unless I knew something would actually change. That night, Brayden went back to his car and opened his phone. He drafted a message to his assistant, send me copies of Store 9's staffing reports for the last 4 months. Also request HR logs related to complaints from this location. Don't flag it to the district team. He hit send, then stared at the warehouse. They weren't just short-staffed. They were being lied to, manipulated and pushed to the edge by someone who treated fear like a policy. He wasn't going to let it ride another week. Tomorrow, he'd push harder, and if Shannon pushed back, he'd be ready. By the time Brayden stepped into Store 9 on his 3rd morning, the air inside felt heavier. Yesterday's silence had deepened into something more brittle, a quiet that cracked if you pushed too hard. He noticed it the moment he entered the back hallway and passed Theo, who didn't look up, just kept folding empty boxes at a folding table that wobbled with every movement. Brayden said nothing. He didn't need to anymore. He had seen and heard enough. Today wasn't about observing. It was about testing the pressure points, seeing who broke, who bent, and who stood still. He headed straight for the inventory cage near receiving, where Zariah was already loading returns into wire bins. She didn't greet him, just tossed a plastic-wrapped sweater onto the pile and kept moving. You sleep at all? Brayden asked. She pulled off her gloves. I had to take my brother to school this morning, missed the early bus, so I jogged part of the way here. Brayden considered that. You doing all right? Zariah looked up. No. But what's that got to do with anything? He didn't answer. Instead, he walked toward the back aisle where Marcus was trying to move a pallet jack with a busted wheel. Brayden grabbed the other side. Where's the maintenance tag? He asked. Shannon took it off last week. Said it was still usable. The jack's front wheel dragged like it was glued to the floor. Every foot they moved, it sent vibrations through Brayden's arms. She knows it's still not working, she knows. Doesn't care. They managed to wrestle the pallet into place, then Brayden stepped back and wiped his hands on his pants. He saw Marcus wince again, rubbing his shoulder. You still pushing through that tear? Marcus gave a short nod. Got a doctor's note in my glove box. Never handed it in. Why not? She'd just change my shift again, or drop my hours. I already lost overtime last week. Brayden didn't respond. He didn't need to. What he needed was a moment a clear line crossed something undeniable. It came at 10:45. Shannon stormed onto the floor, clipboard in hand, lips tight like she was chewing glass. She pointed toward the staging area. Who stacked those outbounds? She shouted. No one answered. She pointed again. Those boxes are tilted. That's a safety issue. Who did it? Theo hesitated. Then slowly raised his hand. I thought I had them straight. I tried to match the edge lines. She marched over. You tried. You think customers care that you tried. You want someone to get hurt so you can say you tried. Brayden stepped forward from across the aisle. That's enough. She turned. Excuse me, you made your point. Move on. Her eyes narrowed. You don't tell me how to manage my floor. He didn't flinch. And you don't get to humiliate someone doing their best. She took a step toward him. Do you want to be written up too, Ben? Behind her, Theo was already walking away, eyes fixed on the floor. Zariah had stopped mid-carry, a box balanced on her shoulder. Even Lewis looked up from the labeling station. Brayden didn't move. You're creating a hostile environment. Shannon's voice dropped, colder now. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? He reached into his back pocket and pulled out his wallet. From inside, he slid out his real ID. Brayden Dorsey, he said calmly. Owner and CEO. The silence wasn't immediate. It rolled in slowly like a wave. Shannon blinked. Her mouth opened slightly, no words coming out. Then she stepped back. No one told me you were coming. They weren't supposed to. He turned to the crew. Every single person here has been working under conditions I wouldn't tolerate for a single day in any other store. You've been overworked, undersupported, and silenced. His voice was steady, but the edge was clear now. And that ends right now. He turned back to Shannon. You've harassed employees, ignored safety violations, and lied about staffing levels to avoid scrutiny. You've retaliated against people for speaking up. That's not just unethical, it's grounds for immediate dismissal. Her face reddened. You can't just walk in here pretending to be someone else, and I don't need your permission to know the truth. 2 security staff from corporate, notified earlier that morning by Brayden's assistant, stepped into the loading dock. Brayden nodded toward them. Shannon, you need to leave the premises, effective immediately. She stared at him for a moment longer, then turned sharply and strode toward the office. The security staff followed at a distance. She didn't look back. As the echo of her heels faded, no one said anything, not right away. Then Marcus breathed out, "Holy hell." Brayden turned to the crew. "I'm not here to play hero. I should have known what was happening months ago. That's on me. But we're fixing it starting today." He gestured toward the back hallway. "There's a conference room being set up with HR. One by one, you're all going to get a private space to speak freely. No notes taken, nothing added to your record, just the truth." Zariah finally spoke. "And what happens after that?" Brayden met her eyes. "We rebuild, proper staffing, updated equipment. And new leadership, someone who actually listens." She nodded once, then turned back to her work, but her posture had shifted, no longer braced for impact. Theo stood near the wall, unmoving. Brayden walked over. "You all right?" Theo nodded slowly. I didn't think anyone would actually do something. You deserve better. All of you do." Theo looked at the floor, then up. "Am I still fired?" Brayden shook his head. "You were never fired." He watched the young man exhale and walk away, this time with a little more steadiness in his step. Brayden stayed on the floor the rest of the day. Not as a boss and not undercover. Just present. By 4, an HR rep had already completed 7 interviews. Multiple safety concerns were validated. One of the forklifts was marked out of service. A temporary supervisor was flown in from another location. And Marcus was officially scheduled for a medical reassessment, with full back pay for missed overtime pending review. As workers filtered out for the evening, Brayden stood by the exit. Lewis paused on his way past. "Guess I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For thinking no one up top ever gave a damn." Brayden gave a rare, tired smile. "Sometimes we don't, but we're going to now." Lewis nodded and stepped outside into the fading light. Brayden stayed a few minutes longer, watching the warehouse quiet down. The silence wasn't brittle anymore. It felt like something else now, like relief. 3 weeks later, Brayden sat alone on the warehouse floor of Store 9, clipboard in hand, watching the early shift settle into their new routine. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting pale lines across the concrete, but the tension that had once lived in the corners of this place was gone. What remained was work, still hard, still physical, but no longer soaked in fear. He'd spent every Monday and Thursday here since the reveal, not in an office, but shoulder to shoulder with the people who kept the place running. Not many CEOs could tell you how many seconds it took to scan a winter coat into inventory, or how heavy the roll carts got when the weather turned humid. Brayden could now. Zariah walked past him, dragging a cart loaded with outbound boxes. She stopped when she saw him. "You finally gonna let someone else hold that clipboard?" she asked. Brayden smiled without looking up. "Not until I see at least one shift start on time without a single equipment issue." She raised an eyebrow. "You're gonna be holding that thing until next winter." He set the clipboard on the shelf beside him and stood. "You got a minute," she nodded. They stepped aside, near the old returns cage that now held only sealed, labeled bins. No broken ladders, no makeshift shelving, and no expired product. "I'm looking for someone who can step into a lead role," he said. "Not just for Store 9. I want to build a field team that can audit real conditions across all locations, quietly, directly. You'd be part of that." Zaraya crossed her arms, not in defiance but in consideration. "You want me to spy on the other stores? I want you to do exactly what you've already been doing, looking out for the people who don't always get heard, but this time with backing." She didn't answer right away. "I'd still be on the floor sometimes. Absolutely. That's the point." "You'd report directly to me, no middle layer." She nodded slowly. "Then yeah, I'm interested." He extended his hand. This time she took it. Before she returned to her station, she added, "Marcus thinks you're going to get bored and stop showing up." Brayden shook his head. "Not likely." Lewis passed by as they spoke, a clipboard of his own in hand. He was helping train 2 new hires, both temps, both scheduled for review after 7 days. This time with proper onboarding, safety orientation, and clear expectations. The HR interviews had revealed more than just management misconduct. They exposed a chronic pattern of poor follow-through from the regional level. Requests for staffing, equipment repairs, and schedule adjustments had routinely been delayed or ignored. Brayden didn't just replace Shannon, he restructured the entire reporting system. Now, every store had a direct line to a newly created operations liaison, bypassing the old district management layer entirely. Inside the break room, the vending machine was gone. In its place stood a small kitchenette with a working microwave, a filtered water station, and a whiteboard listing shift changes, safety updates, and birthdays. Theo stood beside it, reading the new training schedule posted for next week. He jumped slightly when Brayden entered. "Didn't see you there," Theo said. "Getting used to the new setup?" "Yeah, it's different, better. You've been consistent," Brayden said. "Your supervisor told me you haven't missed a scan in over a week." Theo looked down, clearly unsure what to do with the praise. Brayden waited. "I didn't think I'd last here," Theo admitted. "I kept waiting for someone to tell me I wasn't needed." "You were always needed, you just weren't supported," Theo nodded. "I'm staying if that's all right." "It is," Brayden said. Later that afternoon, Brayden met privately with Marcus in the newly designated worker feedback room, once Shannon's office, now stripped of its blinds and repurposed with 2 chairs, a desk, and a lockable suggestion box. "You talked to your doctor?" Brayden asked. "Yeah. They want me off lifting for at least another 3 weeks. "You'll stay on modified duty," Brayden said. "No loss of pay. We'll rotate you through systems checks and logistics tracking. You've already got experience there, right?" Marcus nodded. "Back in my first warehouse job. Before this place." "Good, I'll have someone from corporate shadow you next week. We're building an injury mitigation program. You'll help write it." Marcus blinked. "You sure you want me doing that? You're the reason we found half the risks in this place." "That's exactly who I want." When Marcus left the room, Brayden stayed behind a moment longer, eyes fixed on the box in the corner. Already it held 3 folded forms, none anonymous. Outside, the afternoon shift began arriving. A few greeted him with nods or quiet hellos. No one looked over their shoulder. No one flinched at the sound of the office door. At 5, Brayden met with the temp agency representative in the loading yard. She was reviewing the site's new requirements, mandatory minimum training hours, weekly performance reviews, and direct feedback from floor leads instead of off-site recruiters. "We can meet those," she said. "But you're the only client asking for this level of detail." Brayden didn't flinch. "Then I'm fine being the only one." As the sun dipped low, he walked the perimeter of the warehouse one last time. The exterior lights flicked on without delay. The loading dock was clean, organized, and quiet. He found Zaraya again near the receiving dock, scanning inbound freight with a new hire beside her. "You still here?" she asked. "Just needed to see it with my own eyes." She didn't ask what he meant. She just nodded and returned to the scanner. Brayden stood still for another few seconds, watching the rhythm of work unfold without chaos, without shouting, without fear. Then he turned and walked toward the side exit, where no one stopped him and no one had to. Behind him, the warehouse kept moving, not perfect, but now finally right.